Welcome to Meeple Mentor. I'm Jared, and we are about to play Perseverance Castaway Chronicles Episode 1. It comes with 2 episodes in the box featuring 2 different games using many of the same components. In this tutorial, I'll be teaching Episode 1. Feel free to pause the video as needed to follow along with your copy of the game. My goal is this video can not only teach you to play, but can be shown at the game table to help set up and teach the game at your next game session. As part of that goal, I've added chapter timestamps in the description to the different sections of the tutorial to easily recap relevant rules for you. Also, my copy of the game uses the Kickstarter Deluxe upgraded components. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell below the video so you don't miss any of my latest content. Perseverance Castaway Chronicles begins with your long-deserved holiday cruise aboard the Pearl of the Seas luxury liner. However, a terrible storm ran the ship ashore of an unknown and mysterious island. Without a hope for contacting anyone for help, it became clear that the island is your new home. You aren't the only ones on the island, though. It's inhabited by fierce dinosaur-like creatures who want to destroy your camp and eat you. You must organize the panicked survivors and offer defenses to protect them from the incoming creatures. Establish your community, gain followers among the shipwrecked to become the leader of this new world. Work together with the ship's senior officers, gain votes for your contributions, and ultimately gain more followers than the other players to win the game. Before getting more into the setup, I'm going to assume you've punched and sorted all the components into the game trays included in the box. Not only does this help with storage, it will help facilitate setting up and playing the game. There are some components used in both episodes 1 and 2, while others are specific to each. When looking for components to episode 1, look for the blue diamond icon with the raptor skull. The purple diamond with the shield head skull is only used in episode 2. Additionally, you can choose to use the standees or miniatures. I'll be using the miniatures in this video, but the gameplay is the same. Find the game board that looks like this and shows the raptor icon in the bottom left corner. Place it on the center of the table showing the player count side for your game as shown in the bottom right. I'll be demonstrating a 3-player game setup. Across the top defenses area, place 4 dangerous combat area tiles in the 3rd row matching the name. Likewise, below in the community area, place the 4 community area cover tiles out. Lay out the Dino Attack combat rewards board next to the main board. Place the 3 breach tokens on it in these 3 spots. These are the recommended starting spots for your first game. Now place the assembly board on the table with the assembly scoring tiles showing your player count. Check both sides if you can't find one. A 2-player game uses the reverse side of the board. Place the scoring tiles out from least to greatest follower rewards shown. Below it, place the assembly reward tiles out. Shuffle the patrol cards together and draw until you get 2 single-stage cards. Reshuffle the deck if you have to put out the double-stage cards back into the draw deck. Separate the challenge cards by light and heavy soldier types, then shuffle them separately. Put them next to the patrol deck along with the threat die. Place all the dinosaurs on the table above the game board to create a supply. Also put out the 2 dinosaur dice, wall die, and trap die. Create supply piles by the board of the various resources. You'll have food, scrap, and story tokens. Collect the 4 officer tiles and place them below the board, assigning them to a different zone. For your first game, place them in this order. The Chief Mate goes below Sustenance, Chief of Security below Military, Chief of Steward below Expansion, and the Chief of Engineer below Protection. Now you'll need to create the dice pool. Collect 10 neutral dice in a 4-player game, 8 in a 3-player game, and 9 in a 2-player game. Also add 1 player die from each player to the pool. In a 2-player game, also add 2 dice of an unused player color to the pool. These are referred to as the Dissenters. Now that the main game is set up, it's time to set up each player. Let everyone choose an aspiring leader and take their player board. For your first game, use the A side that has the same setup across each. Choose a color to be and take the tray of all that color's components. Take your leader miniature and attach your color base to it. Take the follower dial and set it to 10 followers. The components you'll use in Episode 1 are 12 settlements, 7 walls, 8 traps, 4 dice, and 5 heavy and 5 light soldiers. You'll need 15 influence cubes, so you'll want to remove 10 from your supply. Give each player 1 patrol stage marker to the side. Put the Valor, Safeguard, and Vote tokens at 0 on their respective tracks. Everyone gets some starting resources: 1 food, 1 scrap, 2 stories, and 1 light soldier. Gained soldiers sit on your player board. Distribute the player aid reference sheets to everyone. Whoever has been on a boat most recently will be the first player. Turns will go clockwise for the rest of the game. Before the first turn, go in reverse turn order, letting each player choose a zone to place one of their settlements in. It'll go in the lowest empty settlement space. Then place one of your influence markers on the chief tile below it. For a 2-player game, add a Dissenter settlement to the 2 unchosen zones. Randomly choose one of them to gain an additional settlement and place 2 Dissenter influence cubes on the corresponding chief. Lastly, put 1 Dissenter influence cube on each of the other 3 officers. With that, you're set up and ready to play. In Episode 1 of Perseverance, you'll be trying to gain followers to win, most of which can be earned during assemblies or dinosaur combat. On your turn, you'll draft a die from the dice pool and use it to take an action on the main board. Dinosaurs populate the zone, and you get a secondary action each turn. Lastly, you'll resolve a patrol card if you have one, and check for dinosaur attacks in your zone. An assembly happens after all the dice have been taken from the dice pool. A 2-player game has 2 assemblies total, while 3 and 4-player games have 3 assemblies. After the last one, the game ends and some final scoring happens. You'll get points for pretty much everything you can gain: resources, soldiers, and even your components in the defense areas on the board. Resources are used for a variety of things, mostly shown on the actions that you could take on the game board. However, I'll point out that when drafting dice, you can always pay 1 story token to change the face of the die before using it. The first thing to do on your turn is to do a primary action. Choose an available die from the pool. You can take any one you want, but if you take another opponent's die, you lose 2 followers. In a 2-player game, you don't lose followers when using a Dissenter die. Place this die on any empty action space for dice, corresponding to one of the actions found in the various community areas. There are multiple action spaces for mini actions, as shown by the line attached to them. When possible, the die must be placed on a matching icon spot within those options. If unavailable, then you can put it on an empty space without an icon. When placing the die, you must be able to resolve the effect of the action. You can't just place one to prevent someone else from going there. Right after placing the die, look at the dinosaur icons attached to the spot. If multiple are shown, resolve them top to bottom. There's raptors and tramplers. Add them one at a time to empty dinosaur spaces in the defense area of the same zone. Follow the arrows starting from the top left space. When you see a die shown, roll the white dinosaur die and put what's rolled out to the defense area. Once a dinosaur attack has been resolved in the zone, you'll roll the yellow die going forward there. Dinosaurs will sit on spaces where traps are placed, if there are any. If you have to add more dinosaurs than empty spaces, just add as many as you can and stop. After adding the dinosaurs to the zone, then resolve the community effect of the action where you placed your die. Some actions require you to spend a cost. I'll explain each of the actions later. Then you'll get to do your secondary action. There's 4 choices available as shown on your player aid. You get to do one of them. You could add an influence cube of yours to any officer tile you want below the board. You can spend story tokens to add more than one. Spend 2 stories to place 2 and 4 stories to place 3. Move them from your supply to the empty squares shown on the tile until it fills up. The immediate bonus triggers whenever 4 cubes fill those spaces. Only players that have 2 or more cubes in those spaces get the reward. After this, if you have more cubes to add, you can keep placing them on the now empty squares. The immediate bonus could be food, scrap, 2 safeguard, or 2 valor. The other reason you want cubes on these is to score followers during an assembly based on their scoring method. Whoever has the most influence on it scores the full points, while second place gets half the points they can earn. The second option for a secondary action is to place 1 or 2 soldiers from your player board to empty defense spaces on the map. You can split them between multiple zones. When you place one on the top row, you gain 1 valor. When placing on the bottom row, you gain 1 safeguard. The other two secondary action options involve using your leader. If your leader is on your player board, you could move them to either an empty community leader space or one of the defense area spaces. When placing it as a soldier, also gain the Valor or Safeguard like normal. When you place your leader in a community area, you get to choose one of the area actions there to take. Each area only has one leader space available, so if it's occupied, you can't place yours there. You get to take an action with them there just like as if you placed a die. No dinosaurs are added though. Leaders in the community areas will automatically come back to you during an assembly. Leaders in the defense zones automatically come back to you after the dinosaurs breach. After your secondary action, you'll resolve the patrol card in front of you if you have one. I'll cover the patrol cards later, but essentially you gain the rewards of the patrol card in front of you now after your primary and secondary actions. Lastly, check to see if a dinosaur attack happens in your zone. If all the spaces in the defense area are full of dinosaurs, you must resolve the dinosaur attack before the turn is over. Generally, you don't want to be the active player when a dinosaur attack happens unless you're sure they're all going to be defeated. After checking for and resolving completely any dino attack, check if the dice pool is empty. If it is, proceed to doing an assembly. Otherwise, the next player clockwise starts their turn. Now let's see what happens when the dinosaur spaces in a defense area fill up and a dinosaur attack resolves. First, check all the traps, then handle the walls, then resolve the first row of soldiers, and lastly the second row of soldiers. Should any dinosaurs remain after this, they breach and attack the community. Then players earn combat rewards for their contribution to defending the community. Lastly, there's a retrieval step and some cleanup. So first, you'll resolve all traps in the zone. Turn them all face up. The owner of each trap rolls the trap die for each one. If you roll the 2 followers, the dinosaur stays there, but the trap owner gets 2 followers. If it has the hex icon with the dino skull and 2 followers, the dinosaur is also trapped. That player collects the dinosaur in front of them. For the other 2 results, the dino is only trapped and followers earned if the trap matches the type of dinosaur that's on it. Leave the traps there either way. Next, resolve each wall that is in the zone from left to right. For each one where there's a dinosaur in front of it in the column, the owner rolls the wall die. It can give you a safeguard, followers, and can stop the closest dino if the hex result with the dino icon is showing. When you roll that, the owner of the wall removes the closest dinosaur to the wall in the same column. Collect it in front of you. If there are any dinosaurs still remaining, you'll proceed to the fight phase. Start with the first row and resolve each soldier left to right. Again, for any dinosaurs killed, the owner of the soldier collects it next to them. The light soldier kills the dinosaur closest to him. The heavy soldier kills the 2 closest dinosaurs. Whenever a light or heavy soldier attacks a raptor, the soldier is also killed. To note this, tip them over where they stand. A player's leader will kill 2 dinosaurs, but cannot be killed themselves. Resolve the second row of soldiers and leaders until all have resolved their attack. Next is the breach phase. Skip it if all the dinosaurs were defeated. Resolve in order all breaching tramplers, then raptors. For each breaching trampler, remove the topmost settlement from the board. They'll return to the player's supply. Then each raptor will attack a different player's settlement, starting with the topmost. Each time a settlement is attacked, the owner loses 2 followers. In a 2-player game, nothing happens if a raptor attacks a dissenter's settlement. The active player whose turn it is now loses 2 followers for each dinosaur that breached. Then remove them from the board and return them to the supply. After the breach phase, players get to earn combat rewards for their contributions to the attack. Add up each player's contribution, 1 for each trap, wall, soldier, and leader in the defense area. Players can simultaneously choose rewards from the rewards board up to the number of options allowed by the chart. So with a contribution of 4 or 5, you get 3 choices. They must all be different, and you can't choose the 3 that have the breach tokens on them. The player who contributed the most may repeat one of their picks. Most require you to spend Valor or Safeguard. If you don't have it to spend or choose not to, you don't get the reward. The last step of the attack is the retrieve phase. All defeated soldiers that were laid down return to the owner's supply. Soldiers who were undefeated and leaders return to the player's boards. Move all the dinosaur traps to the area beside the Chief Engineer Officer tile. The used traps can't be used again, but can be scored with his scoring condition. All walls will stay in place. Now all the collected dinosaurs can return to the supply. If this was the first time an attack happened in the zone, remove the breach token and community area cover tile from the zone. From now on, anytime you should roll a dinosaur die for placing a die in this zone, you'll roll the yellow one instead of white to populate more dinosaurs. Let's look at what all the combat rewards are found on the rewards board. I'll just go through each one, but you can always review the full explanation in the rulebook on page 30. Option 1 lets you spend 3 Valor to gain followers for the dinosaurs you've defeated. Get 1 follower for each Trampler and 2 followers for each Raptor. Option 2 costs 1 Valor and 1 Safeguard and lets you gain 2 followers for each of your walls in the zone the dino attack was triggered in. Option 3 costs 1 Safeguard and gives you 1 production resource from the zone the attack happened in. You'll get to either gain a food, light soldier, story, or scrap. Option 4 costs 2 Valor and 1 Safeguard, gain 5 followers. Option 5 has you spend 1 Valor and 1 Safeguard to gain followers for your soldiers that were defeated in this combat. 1 follower for each light soldier and 2 followers for each heavy. For option 6, spend 2 Safeguard to retrieve your leader to your player board. This is useful when the leader wasn't in the combat you just did. If it was, you would get it back automatically. Option 7 costs 2 Safeguard and gives you 1 follower for each of your settlements and 2 followers for each of your player dice in the zone the attack was triggered in. The last option costs 1 Valor and gives you 1 light soldier added to your player board. It's about time now to look at what each action does for each community effect possible. First, let's see the community effects found in the protection zone, then going left across the board. The salvage action gives you 2 scrap tokens from the supply. Anything you gain should sit on your player board. The fortifications action has 4 options to choose from. You may choose up to 2 different ones. The first one lets you place one of your traps, your choice, on any empty space in a defense area. The second one lets you spend a food to place a trap and gain 1 Valor. The third option lets you spend a scrap to place a wall token on any empty wall space on any defense zone. The fourth option lets you spend a scrap and story to place a wall at any open space and gain you 2 followers. In the expansion zone, there's 3 potential actions. The supply action gives you 1 scrap and 1 food. The politics action has 2 options, but you must choose one. The top action lets you spend 1 food to exchange a neutral die in the pool with one of your colors. The neutral is removed from the game. Then gain 1 follower for each of your dice in the pool or currently on the main board. The second option lets you pay 1 food and 1 story to swap out a neutral die currently on the main board with one of your colors. Then gain 2 followers. The settle action has 2 options, but you must pick one when resolving it. The top option lets you pay 1 food to place one of your settlements from the supply to any empty settlement space on the board. The small diamond spaces in the center of the community areas are the only places settlements can go. When placing a settlement, you get the benefit of whatever is shown on the space. There's all kinds of bonuses. Also, more settlement spots and bonuses open up after the zone becomes dangerous, meaning a dino attack has been resolved there. This one lets you place up to 3 soldiers on soldier spaces in defense areas. You'll gain the Valor or Safeguard points like normal. This bonus lets you retrieve your leader from the board no matter where it is. This one gives you 3 Safeguard. There are also bonus spots that give you 1 or 2 of the production provided in that zone. Food, light soldiers, stories, and scrap. These bonuses give 2 votes or 1 vote, which are tracked on your player board. They can be used in the next assembly to gain followers. Lastly, this icon means you may place one of your influence tokens on the officer in this zone. The second option in the settle action lets you place 2 settlements for a cost of 1 story, 1 scrap, and 1 food. You may place the first one anywhere you like and gain its bonus. However, the second one must be placed into a different zone than the first and into the lowest empty spot. You do not collect any bonus for it. Next, we'll look at the military zone. It only has 1 action, training. You may choose to resolve up to 3 different options within the training action box. You can do them in any order and use what's gained in one to pay for another. You can gain a light soldier to your board. You can pay a food to get another light soldier on your board. This option lets you pay 1 scrap to gain a heavy soldier. The fourth option lets you pay 1 story to convert up to 2 of your light soldiers on your board to 2 heavy soldiers. The next one lets you pay 1 story to place up to 2 soldiers from your board to any defense area. Gain the Valor and Safeguard as normal. The last option gives you 1 story token. Over in the Sustenance Zone, the Rations action gives you 2 food from the supply. The Pub action lets you gain 1 story plus stories equal to the number of your player's dice on the board or in the pool. The last action is the Patrol action. It lets you gain a new patrol card from the 2 face-up in the display as long as you don't already have one active. Choose one to take and put it in front of you. You must be able to assign the minimum number of soldiers to the patrol card as is shown in the top left of the card. You may place up to 8 soldiers on a patrol card if you wish, but all soldiers must come from your player board. Replenish the taken card with a new one from the deck. There are single and double staged patrol cards. If it's a double stage, place your patrol marker on the first section. The soldiers you choose can be any combination of light or heavy. The soldiers cannot be moved or reassigned until the patrol card is completed. For now, this is all you do with the patrol card until after your secondary action. So the turn steps again are primary action, secondary action, patrol resolution, and dino attacks. If you have an active face-up patrol card in front of you after your secondary action, you may now resolve it. First, gain all the rewards shown on it. For stage 2 patrols, only gain the rewards shown for the stage you're in. Now, if the patrol card shows any challenge cards on it, you may resolve them. Draw as many challenge cards as you have soldiers on the card. Draw yellow ones for light soldiers and red ones for heavy soldiers. From this selection, you can keep and resolve up to as many as are shown on the patrol stage. Any you don't choose should return to their decks. First, immediately receive the rewards shown on the challenge cards kept. Some of the challenge cards show a threat in the bottom corner. If you keep any of these cards to resolve, you must roll the threat die for each one. If you roll less than the number shown, you must kill the corresponding soldier type. Once all of them are rolled for that need to be, you can proceed. If at least one soldier survives a 2-stage patrol card, you may attempt to move on to the second stage. The threat number shown at the bottom of the patrol card must be rolled for to move on. If your roll is equal to or greater than the number shown between the stages, move your marker to the next stage and leave all the soldiers on the card that haven't died. If you roll lower than the threat value and you have more than one soldier on the card, kill one of them to your supply and move on to the next stage anyway. If you only had one soldier and rolled lower, the soldier is defeated and the patrol card is done. You could also just choose not to proceed to the next stage to return the soldiers there back to your player board. When properly moving on to a second stage on a patrol card, you should stop and let it sit. On your next turn, when you can resolve a patrol card, you'll resolve stage 2. Once a patrol card is completed, return any remaining soldiers there to your player board and flip the card over. Keep it face down in front of you, which will be useful in scoring the Chief of Security's scoring method. Reshuffle all the challenge cards for both decks completely. An assembly happens after all the dice in the pool are gone. Let the player who took the last one finish their turn completely before moving on to the assembly. After an assembly, the next player clockwise takes their turn like normal. In 3 or 4 player games, you'll resolve 3 total assemblies. In a 2-player game, only 2 are resolved. Assemblies let you gain lots of followers for how you did. A big part of that will look at your presence in each community area, which can help you get votes. Anything there that's your color will add to your total. Colored dice, settlements, and potentially your leader. First, you'll look at each community area from left to right and determine the most presence in each zone. For each area, whoever has the most will get to take the reward tile for that area. After all reward tiles are distributed, those players choose which reward of the 2 options to take. They do this simultaneously and secretly. Once everyone's chosen what they want, reveal the tiles at the same time. One reward option is to take 2 of the zone's production, as shown under the name: food, light soldiers, stories, and scraps. The other reward option is to gain a number of votes from that area's population. The population is always 2 plus the number of settlements there. Adjust your votes earned on your player board. If there's a tie for first place with 2 players, the tied players get half the votes rounded down instead of the full rewards. If more than 2 people tied, no one gets anything. Look again at each area for any second place player for most presents. They get half of the unchosen benefit rounded down. It would be either a single production or half the votes of the area rounded down. Tied players for second place get nothing. In a 2-player game, keep track of votes earned by the dissenter as if they were a third player. If they have the single most presents in an area, they always gain votes. They would also gain half the votes if tied for first. The dissenter would ignore all rewards except for votes. After resolving the rewards, move on to assembly scoring. Check the vote count of each player and dissenter. Rank everyone by the number of votes. Based on the current assembly tile from left to right, first, second, and third place in votes are awarded followers. Always track followers on your dials. Players with no votes cannot be ranked. Ties are friendly, so all tied players get the full number of followers for the place earned. The dissenter in a 2-player game could end up claiming first or second place during assembly. Ignore the followers they would gain. They simply prevent the human players from scoring them. Next, look at each of the officer tiles below the game board and score them from left to right. Each officer's scoring condition is described in detail in the rulebook on page 29. The players with the most influence cubes on it gain followers based on the shown scoring condition at the bottom of the tile. Then, players with the second most influence score it the same way, but receive only half of the followers rounded down. Ties are friendly for first and second places. Again, dissenters don't gain followers, but affect the majority for preventing humans from scoring the full value. Finally, you'll wrap up the assembly and prepare for the next turn. Remove the leftmost assembly tile from the game and slide the rest 1 space to the left. If there's no more assembly tiles, you'll move on to final scoring. Otherwise, all players retrieve their leaders from the community areas of the board, not defensive areas. Discard the 2 face-up patrol cards to the bottom of the deck and reveal 2 new ones. Reset each player's vote count to 0. Collect all the dice from the main board and apply some changes to the pool for a 2-player or 4-player game. Then re-roll everything to create a new dice pool. In a 2-player game, add 2 dissenter dice to the pool, then place 1 dissenter influence cube on each officer tile. Resolve any officer bonuses like normal if this triggers their effect. In a 4-player game, after the first assembly, remove 1 neutral die from the game. Now you're ready for the next player's turn to continue as normal. After resolving the final assembly in your game, there's some extra followers to be scored. First, look at all the walls and traps across all the defense areas. Add them up for each player, then rank them. Followers are earned for first, second, and third according to figure 1 on rule page 27. So in a 3-player game, first place gets 5 followers and second place 2. Ties are friendly. Secondly, add up each player's number of soldiers in the defense areas, including their leader if there. Rank them again and give them followers based on the same scoring chart. Finally, extra followers are given for remaining assets on your player board. You'll get 1 follower for each food, scrap, story, and heavy soldier. For every 2 light soldiers, gain 1 follower, and for every pair of safeguard and valor points you have, earn 1 follower. If there's a tie, the winner is the player with the most total soldiers among the main board, their player board, and an unfinished patrols. If still tied, they share the victory. After your first game of Episode 1, you may want to play with more variable setup than the starting recommendations. I'll cover briefly here a couple ways to do that. The first way is to vary where the 3 breach tokens go on the Dino Attack Combat Rewards board. There are 8 possible rewards that can be in the game, but 3 are always unavailable. To randomize which 3 aren't in the game, draw 3 cards off the shuffled deck of one of the challenge decks and look at the number in the top corner. Place the tokens in the corresponding reward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Or players can choose together which 3 rewards are out of the game. The second variable setup you can do is to randomize which zones the officer tiles are placed in. Shuffle the 4 together and deal them under the board in a random order. During the player setup, use the variable ability sides of the character boards. They are the B sides and have the double layer on them. All players will need to follow suit on the same side. For starting resources and soldiers, look at the top left of the leaderboard for everything you start with. These are unique to each character. You'll have a unique leader ability during the game now. Adelita's ability affects your secondary action of influencing an officer. You may substitute 1 food for 2 stories to pay for more influence cubes. Jack's ability affects your primary action when placing 1 or more dinosaurs to the defense area of your zone. You may choose to place one of them, your choice, into a different defense area as long as it won't immediately trigger a breach there. Phoenix's ability is the net gun and affects you whenever placing your leader in a defense area. You can choose to take an additional valor or safeguard, or immediately place one of your traps under a dinosaur already in that defense area. Each space is still limited to only 1 trap. Kiani's ability boosts what you can do whenever resolving the training effect. In addition to whatever you resolve, you may also place 1 light soldier from your player board to any defense area. Gain the safeguard or valor like normal. To change up your gameplay a bit to remove some of the unpredictability, you can opt to use the deterministic rule set. It is fully modular, letting you choose which aspects you want to make determined. The goal is to reduce the impact of die rolls for those uncomfortable with it. For more deterministic dinosaur placement, start the game by rolling both of the dinosaur dice. Leave them out near the board. Whenever someone would have to roll a die, just place what's currently visible on the die, then re-roll it. Whatever is currently the die result will be the next placement, which helps players know what to expect when going to die roll locations. For the results of wall effects, keep the wall die in the game box. During a dino attack resolution, players get 1 safeguard automatically for each of their walls, and that's all. During the fighting, the closest soldier or leader to the wall in that column attacks and kills 1 additional dinosaur. To remove the die rolls for traps, keep the trap die in the box. When evaluating traps, each revealed trap that matches the dino on it automatically defeats it. Put the defeated dino in front of the trap owner, who immediately scores 3 followers. Traps that don't match the dinosaur on them don't do anything, but still count towards that player's contribution. To remove the threat of losing soldiers on patrol cards, leave the threat die in the box. Instead, give each player a threat tracker card and 2 threat tracker tokens. Put these out on their noted starting locations on the card. Whenever you would need to roll the threat die, instead advance on the threat track with the respective soldier's tracker token, the number of steps equal to the threat value. Always go clockwise around. When the soldier type isn't specified, such as rolling to move to the next stage of the patrol card, you may choose which one to advance. You may not split them up. Every time you cross the skull symbol, return 1 soldier of that type from the patrol card to your supply. Episode 1 can be played completely solo with some changes. You'll have dissenters in this game, similar to a 2-player game. Story-wise, the dissenters are trying to do everything possible to make you look ineffective and direct votes away from you during assemblies. You'll need to improve your general level of acceptance high enough for your leadership to be accepted. For this, you'll need a second tracker, the acceptance dial, to record that. To begin setting up, lay out the dissenter board with the blue Episode 1 side face up. Put the acceptance dial near you, set to 5. Choose your own color, then assign a color for 2 other dissenter players. Place their leaders on their assigned spots on the dissenter board. So for example, red will be Narek and yellow will be Camilla. Put these components out next to the board for each dissenter. They're 5 player dice, 18 influence cubes, 10 soldiers, walls, and all their traps. Their traps should be shuffled into a draw stack for each dissenter. Past this, they won't need a player board, follower dial, or other markers. They'll never gain resources, votes, valor, or safeguard. Set up the main board similar to a 3-player game, creating a dice pool with 8 neutral dice and 3 player dice. Remove the assembly board, assembly scoring tiles, and assembly reward tiles to the game box. You'll now need to choose a difficulty level and set each dissenter's readiness. The readiness chart is found at the bottom of the dissenter board. The further to the right you place one of their influence cubes, the more ready they'll be, making them more difficult. For your first solo game, try putting both of the readiness in the middle. There's 4 levels of difficulty you can choose by selecting the ambition card for it. From easy to hard, there's Squatter, Pioneer, Trailblazer, or Conqueror. Tuck the card below the dissenter board so the victory conditions are visible. The rest are returned to the game box. Try Pioneer for your first time. Now collect all the Dissenter action cards. Set aside the reshuffle icon card. Shuffle the deck and take 2 out randomly. Shuffle those 2 with the reshuffle card and put those on the bottom of the Dissenter Action card deck. Set the deck above the Dissenter board and reveal 3 cards from the top to the left of the deck. This will be known as the action row. Next, you'll determine starting zones for both Dissenters. Place Nerek's starting settlement in the zone shown on the leftmost card of action row. Put 1 influence cube on the officer below it. Place a settlement for Camilla in the zone shown in the rightmost Dissenter Action card. Also add their influence cube to the officer. If it's the same zone, do the next one to the right. Think of the 4 zones as a loop going from left to right and looping back to the sustenance zone. Choose your starting zone from the 2 left and place your settlement and influence like normal. You begin as the first player, and you're now ready to begin. Your turns play out the same as in a regular game, including losing 2 followers for using a Dissenter's colored dice. When resolving a Dissenter turn, flip the top card of the Dissenter Action deck face up and place it on the deck. The bottom of it shows 3 icons, 2 with Dissenter symbols and 1 X. This corresponds to the 3 cards in the row. Move Nerek's corresponding action card to his spot on the Dissenter board and do the same for Camilla's. Fully resolve Nerek's action card with his components and check for Dinosaur Attacks and Assemblies. Each action card will direct you on how to resolve their primary and secondary actions. Then fully resolve Camilla's space with her components, also checking afterwards for a Dino Attack and Assembly. Now discard both cards from the board to a discard pile and leave the remaining card in the action row in its spot. Move the top Dissenter card to the leftmost empty spot of the 3 in the action row. Don't move the card already there. If this card has the reshuffle icon, immediately do the reshuffle procedure before doing the next step. Otherwise, put the top card face up into the last space of the action row. Again, if this card is a reshuffle card, do the reshuffle procedure before proceeding with your next turn. To resolve the reshuffle procedure, set the reshuffle card to the side first. Do the special effect at the top of the card. For episode 1, that means to place 1 of the visible patrol cards on the bottom of the deck and reveal a new one. Then you'll shuffle the Dissenter card deck with any in the discard pile. Leave the ones in the action row there. Take 2 cards out randomly from the deck and shuffle them with the reshuffle card. Put these 3 at the bottom of the deck. The Dissenter Action card may target a zone or officer and use some terminology. The active Dissenter is the Dissenter color whose turn you're currently resolving. The next zone is the zone to the right of the one being considered. Loop back to the leftmost when at the far right zone. The opposite zone is the zone shown on the other Dissenter's action card. If targeting a zone is a tie, start with the opposite zone and continue zone to zone from left to right, looping until a suitable zone is found. This process is the same tiebreaker for their primary action effects, such as finding the most settlements of a Dissenter. If for some reason no zone meets the condition and is a valid target, the action or effect on the card is ignored. You can use the same process in choosing officers since they are assigned to zones. Each Dissenter action card will direct you to do a primary action and secondary action, but these are often resolved a little differently than for a human player. The action card will have at the top 4 specialist icons to indicate preference in choosing one. To begin resolving the primary action, look at the top half of the card. If at least 1 die in the pool can be legally placed on at least 1 space of the effect printed on the action card, then this is the chosen effect. Otherwise, find the next effect of the same zone where a die from the pool can be legally placed. If multiple action options, go clockwise looking for a valid spot. If no die can be placed legally in the zone listed on the card, move on to the top leftmost effect of the next zone. Continue looking for valid spots to place a die for the same way until a spot can be found. Then select a die from the pool. Ignore dice that can't be placed on any space of the chosen action. If possible, the Dissenter uses a neutral die. If no neutral is available, they prefer their own player die, then the other Dissenters. They'll choose your color die last. If the Dissenter chooses yours, you gain 2 followers. If multiple players' dice are available, the Dissenter chooses the die face icon earliest in order of left to right on the active action card. Place the die on the selected effect in the top leftmost space possible. Place out the dinosaurs in the zone like normal, and resolve the effect shown on their card. Do the card's effect regardless of the effect of where the Dissenter placed their die. To do the secondary action, resolve the bottom half of the action card, which may involve placing influence cubes on an officer, placing their leader, or some combination with other benefits. I'll review all the action card's primary and secondary effects in just a second. After the secondary action, skip the patrol resolution phase and check for a dino attack. The attack procedure is largely the same, with the Dissenter contributing to the defenses with walls, traps, soldiers, and leaders like you. The Dissenter will not collect any rewards, however. You may only repeat a combat reward if you had more contributions than the Dissenters. In the retrieval step, return all Dissenter soldiers to the supply and leaders to the Dissenter board, whether they survived the attack or not. If there's a breach, any removed settlements of any player should be placed on the tucked ambition card below the Dissenter board on the first empty space of the destroyed settlements track. If the last space is filled, you immediately lose the game. The Dissenter settlements that get attacked by raptors lose you 1 acceptance. No follower penalty for breaching dinos happens if the attack was triggered on a Dissenter's turn. The ration's primary action on a Dissenter card has no effect. The patrol primary action has you put the patrol cards in the display to the bottom of the deck in a random order and reveal 2 new ones from the deck. To resolve the politics effect, the Dissenter tries to convert a neutral die. First, it chooses one in the pool with a specialist icon earliest and left to right order on the card of the other Dissenter's action card. Exchange it with one of its color die. If there are no neutral dice in the pool, check the opposite Dissenter zone for a neutral die to exchange, then move to the next zone until you find one. If multiple in the same zone, exchange the leftmost icon on the opposite Dissenter's card and then preferring the top leftmost one. Otherwise, ignore the effect of the card. The settle effect has the Dissenter place 2 settlements. First, put one in the zone where they have the most settlements of their own. The second one should be in the opposite zone. If it's the same, put it in the next zone. If the Dissenter zone will have a dino attack on their turn, don't place a settlement there. Put it in the next one instead. For the supply effect, the Dissenter does nothing. For the salvage effect, the Dissenter does nothing. To resolve the fortification effect of a primary action, the Dissenter places 1 trap and wall in a zone where they have the most settlements of their own color. The traps are placed at random, drawing from their trap stack on the dino space to be filled next. If the zone is full because a dino attack will be triggered, put the trap in the next zone instead. The wall is placed in the leftmost empty wall space. If the zone is full, put it in the next zone. To resolve the training effect, the active Dissenter places soldiers in the defense area of the zone where it has the most settlements of its own color. If tied, select the zone using the method I already described. You can ignore defended zones. A defended zone will have all columns of the defense area defended fully. If the total number of soldiers present in the column is greater than or equal to the number of visible dino spaces, it's considered defended. When determining if it's defended, heavy soldiers and leaders count as 2. Walls and traps don't factor into it. So to complete placing soldiers as part of the training effect, look at their readiness on the Dissenter board. Depending on which of the 3 spots their cube is in is what kind of placement occurs. In the left space, they'll place 1 light soldier. In the middle space, they'll place 1 heavy soldier. In the right space, they place a light soldier first, then a heavy soldier. If the first soldier made the zone defended, a new zone will be selected for the heavy soldier. To determine which column to place soldiers, use this priority order. First, choose the column with no other soldier or leader, then a column with no wall, then one with 1 dino space if placing a light soldier, or one with 2 dino spaces if placing a heavy soldier. Then look at the column with 3 dino spots when it's a dangerous zone, or lastly the leftmost column with a legal space. Dissenters prefer to place heavy soldiers on the bottom row before the top, and light soldiers on the top row before the bottom. Remember that they never gain Valor or Safeguard. Now let's look at the possible secondary actions you'll see on the action cards. They can be very different than the ones you can do. This secondary action lets you convert a die, just as I already explained when doing the politics effect. This action lets you place your leader if not already placed. Put it in the community area of the opposite zone. If occupied, move to the next one. No effect is triggered by the leader. This one lets you place a leader in a defense area on the board if the leader is available. choose the zone with the fewest empty dino spaces. Ignore the zones with no empty soldier spaces and zones with 3 or more empty dino spaces. If a tie, they select the zone with the most of their settlements, otherwise move to the next. Put their leader in the selected zone even if it is already considered defended, as if it were a heavy soldier. If there are no zones possible, treat this secondary action as a place your leader in a community area secondary action. This effect has you deploy soldiers according to their readiness, like I just described for the training action. Put them in the opposite zone unless it's defended. Then move to the next one until you find a valid target. The Influence Officer secondary action shows a specific officer to add cubes to. Roll the threat die. According to the result and the chart, you'll place 1 or 2 cubes. The dissenters don't gain any bonus from triggering officers. This card has you select the officer where the dissenter has the fewest influence cubes. This secondary action has you place a trap and wall out in the opposite zone as shown on the other dissenter's action card. They're placed in the manner I described for the fortifications action. The rapid settlement secondary action has you put out one of their settlements in the zone with the lowest number of total settlements. Place it in the bottommost empty space and ignore the bonus. The cycle patrol's secondary action does the same thing as the patrol effect, but does not use a die. Let's talk now how the assemblies are handled in a solo game. They are treated mostly the same way, but instead of trying to gain the most votes, you convert votes directly into acceptance. In each zone you have the most presence in, you can gain votes or the zone's production twice like normal. Dissenters don't receive anything. When tied with a dissenter, you get half the votes of that zone. If you're in second place and not tied behind a single dissenter, you gain a single production of the zone. In any other zone, you gain nothing. Now you'll convert your collected votes into acceptance. In the first assembly, you gain acceptance equal to your votes. In the second assembly, you gain acceptance equal to 1.5 times your collected votes, rounded down. In the third assembly, gain acceptance equal to twice your votes. Proceed to officer scoring next. Wherever you have the most influence on an officer tile or tied with a single dissenter, receive followers as normal per their scoring condition. Wherever you are second, receive half the followers rounded down. Dissenters never gain anything. To wrap up an assembly, retrieve all leaders from the community areas like normal. Collect all the dice on the main board and re-roll them to create the new pool. Put the available patrol cards on the bottom of the deck and draw 2 new ones. Reset your vote tracker to 0 and continue with the next player's turn. After the third assembly, move on to final scoring. Check the scoring chart found in the solo rulebook on page 17. If you have more walls and traps in the defense areas in all zones, then one of the dissenters gain 2 followers. If you have more than both dissenting players individually, gain 5 followers instead. Count up your soldiers and each dissenter's soldiers in the defense areas across all the zones. If you have more soldiers than one of the dissenters, gain 2 followers. If you have more than both individually, gain 5 followers instead. Now you gain followers for leftover resources like a normal game. You'll get 1 follower for each food, scrap, story, and heavy soldier. For every 2 light soldiers, gain 1 follower. And for every pair of safeguard and valor points you have, earn 1 follower. Now check the ambition card that was tucked below the dissenter board. If you have reached or exceeded the followers and acceptance goals shown on it, you win the game. If you haven't met both of them, you lose. Remember also that if you had placed the last destroyed settlement on the track, you've already lost. Log your scores to try to improve each time. It can also be fun to try to earn different merits through completing challenges in your solo games. Check out each one on page 17. Keep the rulebook handy and check BoardGameGeek.com for FAQs and extra content. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Like and subscribe if you found this teaching helpful. Stick around to watch another Learn to Play video. And remember, teach when you can, but always be learning. See you next time.